March 21st has carried coronations of ideas, protest lines, and digital firsts across the centuries. From doctrinal defiance in Tudor England to the spark of social media, today's date reveals how change ripples through law, culture, and conscience. Let's rewind. This is your This Day in History. On March 21st, 1556, former Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, was led from his Oxford cell to St. Mary's Church to answer charges of treason and heresy before Queen Mary I's commissioners. Inside the packed nave, Cranmer listened as officials recited the recantations he had signed under pressure, a reminder of how Mary sought to reverse her father's Protestant reforms. When permitted a final statement, he stunned the crowd by renouncing those recantations, declaring the hand that wrote them had betrayed his conscience. Escorted to the stake outside Balliol College, Cranmer prayed aloud, thrusting his right hand toward the flames first. As a symbolic act of repentance rather than fear, witnesses recorded the calm resolve that turned his death into Protestant martyrdom fuel for underground congregations. In the decades that followed, Cranmer's Book of Common Prayer and English liturgy helped define Anglican identity, proving that his ideas endured beyond the pyre. On March 21st, 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte promulgated the Civil Code, soon nicknamed the Napoleonic Code, crystallizing years of revolutionary legal drafting. The code swept away feudal privileges by standardizing property rights, contract law, and inheritance rules for every male citizen, regardless of birth. It also entrenched patriarchal authority, granting husbands primacy over family finances, while limiting the legal capacity of wives and children. Judges gained a clear framework rooted in written statutes, signaling the French shift from patchwork customary law to centralized secular justice. As French armies marched, the code traveled with them, reshaping courts from Belgium to northern Italy and inspiring imitators in Spain, Poland, and beyond. 2 centuries later, echoes of the March 21st Code still structure civil law traditions across Europe, Latin America, and parts of Africa. On March 21st, 1918, the German Army opened Operation Michael with a 5-hour artillery barrage along the Somme, unleashing high explosives, gas, and smoke. Stormtrooper infiltration units then slipped through fog to bypass strongpoints, isolating British trenches before the defenders realized the main attack was underway. The British Fifth Army fell back toward the Somme crossings, improvising rearguard actions as telephone lines, rail junctions, and command posts were shredded. German gains were dramatic, up to 40 miles in some sectors, but logistics lagged, leaving assault troops hungry, exhausted, and short of artillery support. Civilians in Picardy fled along clogged roads, while shattered villages smoldered, illustrating how total war blurred military fronts and home fronts. Operation Michael's initial success could not be sustained, yet it jolted Allied leadership into unified command under Foch, setting the stage for the 100 Days counteroffensive. On March 21st, 1935, Reza Shah Pahlavi asked foreign governments to use the name Iran instead of Persia, aligning diplomacy with the country's indigenous identity. He tied the announcement to Nowruz, the Persian New Year, underscoring his blend of cultural revival and state-driven modernization. Officials circulated linguistic guides explaining that Iran evoked the land of the Aryans, a narrative meant to emphasize antiquity and cohesion. Embassies from London to Moscow updated stationery and treaties, though merchants and diaspora communities often clung to the familiar Persia for years. Inside Iran, the name change joined railroads, secular schools, and dress codes in a push to craft a centralized, internationally respected state. Debates over whether the shift distanced the country from its poetic heritage persist, but March 21st, 1935, marked the diplomatic milestones still used today. On March 21st, 1952, Cleveland's Moondog Coronation Ball opened its doors at the Cleveland Arena, billed as the first major rock and roll concert. Disc jockey Alan Freed leveraged radio fame and the mystique of composer Louis Moondog Hardin to market the event to teenagers hungry for rhythm and blues. Promoters oversold tickets, and thousands of fans without seats pressed against the doors, creating a crush of anticipation and concern. Within minutes, fire marshals and police halted the show after just one song, citing overcrowding and safety risks inside the arena. Although the night ended abruptly, the spectacle proved that integrated audiences would pack large venues for amplified backbeat and electric guitars. Record labels and concert promoters took note, accelerating rock and roll's leap from regional circuits to national youth culture. On March 21, 1960, members of the Pan-Africanist Congress gathered outside the Sharpeville police station in South Africa to protest apartheid pass laws. Organizers urged demonstrators to carry no passbooks and invite arrest, seeking to clog the system through disciplined, nonviolent defiance. Tension rose as police reinforced barbed wire lines, armored vehicles idled nearby, and low-flying planes tried to scatter the crowd. When officers opened fire, 69 people were killed and scores wounded, shocking a world already uneasy with apartheid's brutality. International headlines, United Nations debates, and new economic pressures followed, isolating Pretoria diplomatically. Sharpeville became a rallying cry for the global anti-apartheid movement, memorialized each March 21st as Human Rights Day in South Africa. On March 21st, 1963, the last 27 inmates left Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary under heavy guard, ending nearly 3 decades of operation. Attorney General Robert Kennedy approved the closure after studies showed that salt-laden fog corroded utilities faster than budgets could repair them. Barges ferried prisoners to other institutions, while staff families packed their cottages, leaving the rocky island eerily quiet. Plans soon shifted from military reuse to inclusion in the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, preserving the fortress for future visitors. By the late 1960s, park rangers led limited tours that balanced crime lore with discussions about incarceration policy. Alcatraz's March 21st shutdown symbolized a broader move toward prisons focused on rehabilitation, even as debates over supermax facilities continued. On March 21, 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and more than 3,000 marchers set out from Selma for Montgomery under federal court protection. Judge Frank Johnson's order and President Lyndon Johnson's deployment of National Guard troops transformed the third attempt into a federally shielded demonstration. Crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the column moved in disciplined rows, singing freedom songs where troopers had attacked them 2 weeks earlier. Logistics teams managed food, medical aid, and rotation schedules. As the line wound 54 miles along Highway 80 through Lowndes County. When marchers reached the Alabama Capitol on March 25th, King's speech linked their journey to the nation's constitutional promises. Televised images of the March 21st departure and triumphant arrival helped propel the Voting Rights Act through Congress that summer. On March 21, 1980, President Jimmy Carter announced that the United States would boycott the Moscow Summer Olympics, unless Soviet troops left Afghanistan. He set a May 24th deadline for withdrawal, framing the demand as a defense of international law after the December 1979 invasion. American athletes, many in peak form, faced heartbreak as training cycles collided with geopolitics, prompting debates about sport and diplomacy. Allies including Canada, West Germany, and Japan eventually joined the boycott, while some nations permitted athletes to compete under the Olympic flag. The decision emboldened Soviet bloc retaliation at the 1984 Los Angeles Games, entrenching the Olympics as another Cold War arena. Historians still cite Carter's March 21st ultimatum when assessing how nations wield mega events for foreign policy leverage. On March 21, 2006, Jack Dorsey sent the first public message on the prototype service, WTTR, writing from a small workspace in San Francisco. Engineers Biz Stone, Noah Glass, and a handful of Odia colleagues had spent the day wiring SMS gateways that could post brief status updates to the web. Dorsey's lowercase line, "Just setting up my tutter," captured the platform's casual tone and hinted at a new conversational broadcast medium. Within months, Twitter emerged from side project to startup, spawning hashtags, live crisis reporting, and new debates over attention and discourse. From Cramer's defiant hand to a 140-character experiment, March 21st keeps revealing how individuals challenge empires, laws, and technologies. Until tomorrow, this was This Day in History.